Hey, Mr. Rivers. What's going on? Welcome home. How you doing? Good to be home. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
When Doc Rivers got the job to be the Clippers head coach, I think there was a feeling that this could be the team.
With Doc Rivers' arrival and a championship ring on his finger, some see the Clippers as immediate title contenders.
In what bizarro world does somebody leave the Celtics to be with the Clippers? So much of their history was around misery and not very good basketball, not players who were terribly well liked.
I like the expectations. I don't run from those at all. And trying to figure out if we can figure out a way of becoming a winning team.
When I went to the Clippers, I knew who Donald was. I didn't know the racial part to this extent, obviously, but I just knew the mismanagement of all the years. So listen, I thought that I could come in and change it. I can tell you I was wrong.
Well, they have been the Buffalo Braves. They've been the San Diego Clippers, and now they are 10 years in L.A. They've had 8 different coaches just in Los Angeles. All too often, the Clippers have been a punchline and a punching bag.
Barry on a steal. Will go all the way. Slips. Goes right side, puts it up, misses the layup, gets standing there, misses another one.
The Clippers were a team that people didn't spend a lot of time thinking about, almost a total afterthought.
Zeal got the easy one. Oh, me, oh, my.
It did at times feel sort of like almost supernatural how bad things could be over and over and over again for one place.
This team was a perennial terrible team. You have friends on other teams that have been traded there, and you talk on the layup line, you know, when you're warming up. It was like, how do I get out of here?
At one point last season, the Clippers lost 20 straight games. In 3 different seasons, they didn't even win 20 games. That makes them the losingest NBA team of the 80s.
The general feeling with the Clippers at this time was that bad news was almost assured. Danny Ferry was a guy that everybody in the NBA wanted, and he was going to be the future of a franchise. He did everything in his power to make sure that that franchise wasn't going to be the Clippers. Danny Manning was the biggest star in college basketball. Comes to the Clippers, and boom, his ACL goes, and he's never the same. And whether you thought that was a curse or not, it doesn't really matter. The reality of it was a poorly run organization. If the curse existed, bad decisions and bad ownership and bad management, it just poured gasoline on it.
As the great Michael Dukakis once said, a fish rots from the head down. And Donald Sterling was the guy that made the Clippers bad. That seemed very clear almost from the beginning.
Many close to the Clippers say their biggest problem has always been owner Donald T. Sterling, who reportedly once asked then-coach Paul Silas if he really needed a trainer. Couldn't Silas and his assistants tape the players themselves?
You literally had to make him spend money, because even though he took over ownership in 1981 for $12.5 million, swearing to the world that he was going to make them proud and he was going to spare no expense in order to make the Clippers a championship caliber team, he clearly lied and had no intention of doing such a thing. And as a result, the Clippers were notoriously awful.
I'm looking at it like I look at other investments, as something over the long term will be enormously valuable. And I mean this sincerely. If somebody offered me $30 million for the San Diego franchise, I wouldn't sell it.
We are excited as can be because we think that Los Angeles is more than sufficient to sustain the interest in 2 basketball teams.
Well, they moved to town at the worst possible time, right? Like, it's almost perfect. This is a city very much driven, I think, by things like status and stardom. And the Lakers provided all of that. This is what basketball should be in Los Angeles. It's fast, it's fun, and it's winning.
You went to see the Lakers, it was showtime. You know, the fabulous Forum, there was all this glitz and glamour. But when you went to a Clipper game, you were not dealing with anything close to luxury.
There was hardly anybody there from the industry, really, because they were all going to Laker games. If you were to ask the movie and television industry at large who their favorite basketball team was, 90% of them would say they were Lakers fans.
It was always a disaster waiting to happen. I think that was sort of the feeling around the Clippers in the 80s and the 90s, and it was really something they didn't escape into the 2000s, to be honest.
And hello, everybody. I'm Mark Jones alongside Jay Billis. It is a huge night ripe with anticipation for all 14 NBA lottery teams.
You hope through the draft that you're able to get good players, but it was almost uncanny, his ability to pick the worst players.
We will find out who goes number one. Here's the commissioner, David Stern.
And then suddenly there was hope.
With the first pick in the 2009 NBA draft, the Los Angeles Clippers select Blake Griffin.
Blake was at his peak athleticism. You realize, oh my God, we have an incredible athlete at center who's a good defensive player and a great rim runner and a good guy with good energy.
I noticed the Clippers were gonna maybe be something different than they've been. The night they played the New York Knicks in Blake Griffin's first year.
Randy Foye brings the ball ahead. Around the Griffin screen, pick, roll, slam shot! Oh, me, oh my, what a play!
That was an absolutely essential, defining moment.
It's one of the biggest moments in Clipper history in a lot of ways because I think it opened up a lot of eyes as to what this team could be. That kind of tomahawk, throw the ball through the basket. This was the Clippers' version of Showtime.
And then to hear that we were getting Chris Paul, I actually thought we may have the best talent in the Western Conference.
I've always had a chip on my shoulder. It was great playing for the Clippers here in LA, just because everywhere you go, everyone would say something bad about the Clippers or you with the Clippers or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, it's cool, you know, y'all gotta beat us.
I saw them as having an opportunity to enter the championship conversation. I considered Chris Paul to be one of the great quintessential point guards. Blake Griffin was an aerial assault. The one individual that was underestimated in all of this was a 7-foot skywalker. That was DeAndre Jordan.
And I think we were all kind of fans of each other a little bit. Like, I'm excited when one guy does one thing. I'm super excited when somebody does another thing. So I'm kind of out there as a teammate, but also like a fan watching this kind of go on.
There was a real sense of renewal for the Clippers, getting Doc and building this program out. And that was prevalent on a daily basis.
When I went to the Clippers, my goal was to turn the franchise into a great franchise. DJ, Chris, all the guys, they bought in, and we had a hell of a year.
Here come the Clippers. Paul.
The Lob, the jam! Welcome to Lob City, ladies and gentlemen.
That Lob City season, it was so exciting.
It was an incredible moment because this is a team that was showing more potential than it had ever shown before.
The year of the Sterling tape, it felt like the Clippers weren't going to be a punchline for much longer. It really felt like this was a chance for them to win a title. They had the talent, they had the coach, they had the roster. Everybody felt so good about being a Clipper. And then everything went bad.
Lob City.